Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Shemitah, V'Yovel, prakim Tes, Yud, and Yud Aleph, and we're starting with the 9th chapter with Perek Tes. Perek Tes is all about Shemitah's Ksafim, the nullification of the loans. This chapter has 30 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Mitzvahs say there's a positive commandment, Lahashmit Hamilva Bashvis. Lahashmit Chevra means to nullify loans over the Shemitah year, as it says, Shenem Parasha a pasuk in the 8. Shamay Kol Baal Mashe Yodai. All those who bear a debt must release their hold, right? Mashe Yodai. That if someone is going to demand payment, overall will be violating a negative commandment. What's the negative commandment? Shenemar, they're also in Parasha 8 that lo yigois esrei eyu, one shall not demand payment to his friend and to his brother. When is this law applicable biblically? As we're going to learn in the next chapter. In other words, when there is yovel, then yesham shmitas karka, then the sale of lands are nullified. Which is the same concept of Shemitah's Ksafim, because what really happens, it's not only that they have to allow for everything to go back, but there was no money being returned that year. That's the word. Once the land goes back to the owner doesn't have to give money. The Dovers are Kabbalah. The Omro Chachamim, Bisman Sha'ata Mashmit Karka, which is the din of Yovel, that's only by Yovel. Whenever you nullify the sales of lands, then then all debts, means land is only reverted in the Holy Land. But all loans, biblically, will become nullified. However, on a doiraisa level, as we'll see again in the next chapter, whenever Yovel is not noyig, even ba'aretz. However, okay, why? Same words we had by Chalom. For Yidden, for the Jewish people, not to forget about this rule. The end of the year. It's very important. Just for the record, we follow both opinions. That's why we make a principle in the beginning and at the end. The Rambam says only at the end, and it says befeder shenema mikei sheva shanim. At the end of 7 years, you should make shmita, and then the Torah says v'zed dvar hashmita shamoit. All right, the matter of remission. So remember these words. Now, how is that proof? It's at the end of the year because v'sham nemar. Dear meaning in Parshas Vayelach regarding the din of Hakel, that Mikei Sheva Shanim, the Moyed Shnas Hashmita B'Chag HaSukkos. Over there, when is the mitzvah of Hakel, guys? Mamash at the end. It's actually not only at the end of the 7th year, but it's really in the beginning of the 8th year. Just like over there, Masham Achar Sheva, Hashmatas Ksafim is Achar Sheva. Achar Sheva means at the siyum of the 7th year. That is when the loans become nullified. And therefore, if a person gave a loan on the Shemitah year, he's allowed to collect it the whole year. Because the din that Shemitah's Mishametas was not chal yet. However, then halacha hey, shachat asapara. It was very common before Yom Tov for people to buy meat, and there was no refrigeration, so they shechted it the last second. And what normally would happen is, let's say, Erev Yom Tov, they would shecht an animal. Everyone would take their piece of meat, and they would not always pay on that day. They would owe the money. Now, think about what's going on over here. If they shechted it on Rosh Hashanah proper, they thought it's Rosh Hashanah. Why did they think it's Rosh Hashanah? Because Elul had 29 days, and as we're going to learn, right, as we learned in Kiddush HaChodesh, could be that the next day is Rosh Hashanah. They thought it's Rosh Hashanah. And based on that, they shechted the cow. Now, on Yom Tov, you don't make payment. but everyone remembers more or less the size or the percent. Remember, you take the two animals, that's how they did it, that were of the same size, same value, and to make the cheshbon after Yom Tov. And they made a division. And they discovered that the day that they shechted the animal was really not Aleph Tishrei, it was Lamed Elul, because V'nesabed Elul. It comes out that when did everyone owe money to the butcher? On the last day of the Shemitah year, of the Adamim. Sharei Avra Shviyas Ala Chayv. This is great. There's no solution, man. The solution is either to shech the cow on Chav Tes Elul, or to shech the meat on Beis Tishrei. Mima Nafshach. Not on Aleph Tishrei. Okay, halacha. Next in Chavre. Shviyas Mashmetes Esamova. The Shemitah year nullifies the loan. Meaning, let's go into more details. Even if there is a document, and even if there is a chrais nachasim. Chrais nachasim means that the lender can collect it from a property of the borrower, not from a specific property. Why not a specific? Because the moment there is a specific property designated, you know how we view that? As if it's already collected. But if the borrower designated the property, it's not nullified. Gavaldik. As we just explained, it's keilu, the loan is already paid back. Now, if there was an obligation to take an oath connected to collecting a loan, as we'll see more details, then that also, the obligation becomes nullified. As it says, lo yigois, he shall not demand anything. Not only he cannot demand payment, he cannot demand an oath connected to payment. Now, what type of oath becomes nullified? Or from a claim that had he admitted, then to the loan, right? Had he owed the loan itself would become nullified. In other words, it has to come from a choiv. Shvius nullifies a debt. So a oath connected to a debt makes sense, should become nullified. Aval shvuas hashoimrim, a shvuas of hashoimrim is not about a choiv. It's about a pikadon. A pikadon is not a choiv, guys. If you entrust me to hold your watch, Yakir, and Shemitah comes, I have to give it back to you. A pikadon is not nullified. Or v'hashutfim, if two people are partners, each one has to divide the partnership honestly. And if there's a claim from one partner on the other, that if one party would have admitted he would have to pay, it would not be mishamel because it's not about a choiv. Then it is yishava achar shmita. Makes perfect sense. Hilva'u, the loan was given, and the lender demanded payment, and the kafar boy, and the borrower denied he ever borrowed the money, and the gia shmita v'hu bechviras. He remained in his denial when shmita arrived. And then, after Shemitah passes, he admits he owes the money. Or after Shemitah passes, witnesses come that he owes the money. Ein hashvius mishametes. This is gavaldik. Why? Because since during the Shemitah year, it was not known whether there was a loan or not. Don't forget, we're speaking about a case where the Beis Din did not say you're chayv to pay it. So since there was a question mark on the loan is not nullified. Beautiful. Halacha. It has to be firmly established. That's the key. If it's not firmly established, it's not mashal. But when he lent him the money, he told him that you pay me back in 10 years. And also, einoi mashmit. Eventually, right? Ultimately, the mitzvah of do not demand payment will apply. Since he cannot demand payment on the Shemitah year, so for that loan, God did not say relinquish. But his ne'ima shaloi is be'eno, then shvi is mashmetes. In other words, as long as the loan is in effect, even if you can't collect it, if the loan is in effect, shmitas masham. It's only when we consider it as if the loan is not here yet. In other words, you're not chayv at all. It's not about you can't collect it. It's not. It's not due yet. That's different. These are the words that are used. That doesn't work, right? Because you cannot make a tanai to be mavatal in Torah. Now you can make a tanai, right, I can give you a gift, but you can't word it that shaloi tishmatenu shvius. Shvius is meshamet. Hadei ze nishmat. Sheni yochel levatel din shvius. But here's ne'imoy shaloi yashmit hu choyv zeh. This loan should not be nullified. Then tonight kayim, because the semantics are everything. The Nim says,
isn't that what a
yes, Kevan.
Isn't that what a foosball is? You say a loan should not.
I missed that.
Isn't that what we do when we sign a foosball?
No. We'll get to the foosball soon. No, not at all. Wait. Halacha Yudal. Hakofa sachanus, which is very common. In other words, I have an account in the store. Every time I buy by liters, I don't pay. We trust each other. They write down. And whenever the money accumulates to a significant number, that is when leaders tells the person, now pay up. We view the following, that if I take something from a store, there's this credit. Until when the storekeeper doesn't ask for payment, which means it's not significant for the storekeeper, I don't even owe the money yet. It's not considered a firmly established loan. And therefore, if Shemitah comes, in a nishmetes, but the moment the storekeeper told the balabas, now it hit 10 grand, whatever, then now I need you to pay, and I tell him I can't pay, let me pay later. And the guy says, no problem. Now that's a normal debt. They must say similar nishmetes. Another din, schar sachir einay nishmat, which is quite amazing. Same concept, because many workers wait for their amount to accumulate. Like in America, you get paid twice a month. Well, you don't get paid every day because every day was not enough. If you are waiting to demand payment, I don't want to collect $100. I want to wait until it hits $1,000. I want to, then it's not even called a proper chayviyat. It's amazing. But the im zakar milva, same concept. If the worker tells the balabas, okay, I need payment. I don't care if it's $100, $1, $1 million. Once he asks for the payment, and the employer says, okay, I'll pay you, but let me pay you tomorrow. That becomes a normal milva. Adez an ishmat. A firmly established debt. A firmly established debt. You have to add these words. That's what Rambam is trying to say. It's not firmly established because the loiver was denying he owed the money, or because like in this case. Of course, every time I take from the store, I write my name down. I owe that money, but it wasn't firmly established yet because the guy doesn't wait after I buy once or twice. They wait until after I buy 10 times. Halacha Yudis. Kenosis. All of the penalties the Torah gives for a person, God forbid, who's a ma'anis or a mafata, a moitzi shemra, einam nishmatim, guys, because this is called a penalty. In other words, it's not a choiv, called an oynish. But if I was asked to pay, and what's pshat I was asked to pay, guys, a document was written. That's the pshat. A document was written against the ma'anis in which he signed, I owe the money. Now it becomes a loan. Now nishmatim. In other words, and I just want to add the words that I said, and so say the commentators, it's not just standing in the din. Only from when the person stood trial is it shayich for it to become a milva. When does it become a milva? When you write a document. But if they chose to write, a guy was ma'anas, a girl, God forbid, and he knows he did it. So he already writes a document that's also not a milva. You have to go through the step of going to the din. The Torah has to, based on has to pass in your chayiv. Then if you document it, then it becomes a milva. Prior to that, it's called an oynish. And an oynish is not nullified. Halacha yud gimel. You have to move. Hamagorash yesis toikodim shmita. Ein ksuvasa nishmetes. Because it has the toikiv of a psak din. It's amazing. And any money that's owed through a psak din, now, Kevan, we are beginning with the prusbul. That is also a debt which will not become nullified. Another detail, the impagma oisa. If the husband impaired the legal power of a document, we learned this a lot, and we'll learn this still a lot. How do you do that? Anytime there's a document against me, Yakir, where it says, let's say, you owe me 100. I have a document. Where it says that someone owes me $100. And Amoida, I know you already paid me 50. I weakened my document because the document doesn't say 50. So that's the case where the husband admitted, where she admits, where she admitted that part of the ksuba was paid. That's pagma oisa. Or when she came to collect the ksuba, They were amicable divorce. He tells, I can't pay you now, I'll pay you later. She agreed to make this into any debt. Now it's no longer considered something that's done through basin. Now it's a normal debt. Now, Nishmet is, another din. Just like we said before, if there was an apoy ticket, once there's a specific property, we said, Shemitah will nullify it because it's as if it's collected. What about a mashkin? The same thing. Because if I lend you money, ala mashkin, ain't a mashmid. Because the lender already collected. But what happens if the mashkin, if the debt exceeds? The debt was of $1 million. The mashkin is of $500,000. The other $500,000 cannot be collected. Now, guys, when people learn this, it's so important. People confuse prusbul with halacha tezvav. And I want you to know that halacha tezvav is not the prusbul. And let me say these words. Prusbul, the Gemara, we learned this in Gittin. The Chachamim would not make a prusbul when Shemitah is noyig midorais. This is very important. The Gemara says, since Shemitah is only noyig midarabanan because Shevel is not yet noyig, shaloik tishtakach toiras Shemitah's ksafim mi Yisrael, so they made a prusbul. But prior to the prusbul, even when there is the din Shemitah midoiraisa, halacha tezvav, which is not a prusbul, will always be effective. What is halacha tezvav? A person physically gave the notes to Bezdin. Guys, we don't do this by prusbul yet, Kavan. First of all, many loans are not even documented today. But even the loans that are documented by the prusbul that we make, we don't give them over to the 9 people that are sitting. And again, we have 10 people there or to the 10 people. We make a declaration. That's different. That's much weaker. That only works because of this. Midoiraisa, if money is owed to me, today in the banks, today we're familiar with this. Banks sell notes. If I owe a mortgage to a bank, they bundle it up. They have kach bekach money. When they handle over the notes to another person, then if you hand it over to Bezdin, midoiraisa, I have to pay the debt. For Amar Lahem, you tell Bezdin, Atam Gabal Lichoivi. Since they have the notes, since Bezdin physically has the notes, then ain't a nishma. Shenemar, as it says, the debt that you have with your brother. But if you gave over the notes to the Bezdin, if they render judgment and they write, it's like the ksuba, if there's such a document from a Bezdin, then also ein an ishmat, because whenever there's such a document of a Bezdin, it's as if it's collected. What we're saying now is very important. Okay, Yakid, you got it? But I'm going, the ikar of halacha tezvav is not prusbul. Halacha tezvav is when you physically give over the notes to the Bezdin. Now comes along halacha tezayin, that kishro hil lazokin. Shenim nuwa milahal b'zezeh. Because they don't want the debts to be nullified, even midrabanan. That's going to be nullified midrabanan, and they're going to violate on that which it says in the Torah. The Torah speaks about a bilial, a wicked thought of not lending money. So his can prusbul kadesh leishamet achoy. Achi yalvu zed. Now the prusbul that Hillel made was not give over your notes to the Bezdin. For that I don't need Hillel. He allowed Yakir either for a document to be written, or as we'll see soon, for a statement to be made verbally, in which we're telling a Bezdin, that's not giving over notes. But that will also work. Why will that work? Because Shemitah is only midrabanan. But by Shemitah, if you want to circumvent the din of Shemitah, whenever Shemitah is noig minatoida, for there you physically have to give over the notes. And you know what? If you don't have a note because it's a milval peh, there's no way out. Now, halacha yud zayin, we do not paskin like the Rambam, as the Rambam writes. I'm speaking about Ashkenaz. The chiddush of halacha zayin is you don't have to give over the notes. You just have to make a prusbul. So for that paskins, the Rambam ain't kais from prusbul. Ela beisin shalacham gedel b'yes. Can't do it with any beisin. You have to have the greatest beisin of your time. Ke beisin shal Rav Ami v'Ravasi. Shehem ru'oyim lafkiya mamin b'nei adam. Aval shar batidinam ein kais v'im. Paskins the Ramah chevre. That bisman hazeh, you can make prusbul with anyone. By the way, even the Rambam writes later that Talmidei Chachamim can make it with anyone, because they know that prusbul is only midrabanan. But the Amcha, according to the Rambam, cannot do the way we do it. The Rambam says that's not allowed. Halacha Yudches. Zeu gufay shel prusbul. Right, this is the main body of the principle. Moiser ani lochem pleni upleni adayonim. From walking pleni, that shekol chayv sheyeshli shekben knew that I not can collect it. But when I'm collecting it, Yakir, I'm collecting it as a shliach beis din. You understand? Because I'm collecting the debt, but I'm collecting it because I represent the beis din. Calls man she'ertze. According to the Rambam, you have to actually write it, unless you are Talmidei Chacham. Now, halacha yutas. Ein koisum prusbul ela ala karka. Guys, the borrower must possess land. The borrower must possess land. Remember that. What happens if the borrower doesn't own land? The lender doesn't want to lose the debt. You know what he does? Ela mizakon le'hamal v'kol shu b'toich sadeh. The lender gives him. Afilu kelach shal kiruf. He gives him. You know how much? You know how little land? So little, it's enough to grow a cabbage. That little is enough. More than that, even if he only lent him a place to put down the tanur or the kira, that means the borrower doesn't own it. He only borrowed it. Oichet good. Play more than that. If the borrower has land, problem is the borrower took another debt, Yakir, with someone else, and the borrower gave to someone else that land. Even though if he'll default, that guy will keep the land. But in the Vila, the guy didn't default. So that's also good enough. Which is another chiddush. Normally we say that when a man is married, the nichsa malug is not his. It's enough his. Which means the guardian took out a loan for the sake of the orphans. The guardian took out a loan for the sake of the orphans. The guardian took out a loan for the sake of the orphans. The orphans are the borrowers. The orphans don't own land, but the guardian owns land. So since the guardian owns land, you can make a principle against the orphans. Now, ein loy karka. By the way, the guardian is almost like a guarantor, and only the other has karka. Oichet good enough. Another thing. If the borrower is owed money by another who owns land, here also it's enough. Since the land of the other is mishuba to the borrower, if one guy borrowed money from five, guys, one guy is the borrower, but he owes money. Now, who cannot collect? Guys, this is an issue. I know that the borrower should not pay, but the issue is on the lender. There are 5 lenders, so you need 5 prusbul. But if you have 5 people, 5 borrowers that loan money from one lender, the dayoy prusbul echad l'kulam halacha veis chas of prusbul. Look at this. First, you wrote the prusbul chachamein, and then you loan the money. Einamoyel. Of course not. You know how lenient the prusbul is. You're not giving over the notes. At least there has to be a debt. There wasn't even a debt yet. Ella mashmit, that loan will be nullified. You have to write the prusbul after the loan was given. Say so. That's the rule. Won't be nullified with prusbul. Only when the prusbul was pre-written, then nishmetes, and therefore if there's a prusbul hamugdam, if there is a predated prusbul, that's good. Of course, it's good, Yakir, because a predated means that the prusbul was written before the loan. For example, but they wrote the date ma'adir. Now, who loses out by that? Just to make it clear, guys, a document of a loan is against whom? It's against the borrower. Okay? The borrower has an advantage by God that when Shemitah comes, the loan is nullified. If the borrower agreed to predate it, it goes against the borrower. In other words, when you impair it, it's good. You accepted that. But if you wrote it later, you wrote it from Iyar, puzzle. Why puzzle? Because it strengthens the koyach. Very good. The any my prusbal. Don't forget, guys, that Rambam just paskin that a prusbal cannot be a declaration, even though the Rambam is going to write Talmidei Chachamim can make what we do today. But if you need to have a document, what happens if someone comes after the Shemitah year and they don't have the physical prusbal? But if the lender says Choyli prusbal, but I lost it, Neman. Why? Now listen to this. Shebizman hasakon ve'elech. We're speaking about a time that Goyim made gezeres b'chlal that we cannot keep mitzvahs. And because of that, the whole document of a prusbal is to facilitate the observance of a mitzvah. So people were afraid to hold on to these documents. Wow. Based in actually first says to the borrower, pay him. Only if the borrower says, hey, 1 second, where's the prusbal? Then they ask the lender, they already give him a suggestion. Did you have it and did you lose it? Normally they never do that. And if it says, yeah, Nemon. However, if the lender says, no, I never did it, then of course, another
it's just the honor system.
Huh?
It works on the honor system.
It works because it's all based on the fact that prusbal b'zman hazeh midrabanan, and it's that easy to make the prusbal. So there's a tremendous amount of credit, and the loan was given. Don't forget, everyone is agreeing the loan was given. Another din, a gavaldik din, the minor orphans b'chlal don't need a prusbal. Why? Because all debts that are owed to minor orphans, Yakir, who really collects for them? The Beis Din, or it's really b'koyach Beis Din. And we said there's no hashmatas ksafim on Beis Din. Halacha chafei yochitziyo prusbal. If the plaintiff, that means the lender, produces a prusbal, and the Tran Hanitba Omar, based on what we learned in Halacha Chav Beis, no. Milva zu shuteveya acha prusbal oisa. I know there's a prusbal. The prusbal is a valid document. But hello, the prusbal that was written after the loan was given. The prusbal was written before. And we said the prusbal cannot be written before the loan. If you write the prusbal before the prusbal is not effective. Here again, we believe the lender. Because if he would have says avad, as we just learned, Nemon. If the defendant claims that what? Milva yesh loy etzli, I owe him a debt. I owe him a debt. And what is he saying by that, Yakir? And now that Shemitah came, it's nullified. The Teveya says, no, it wasn't a debt until now. I have a store. It was hakafas achanus. It was credit in the store. We already said credit in the store. She'einu nishmetes. And shadei loy zikafti milva. I never considered it a loan. I never asked for payment yet. Hadei a nemon. Who's nemon? The balachanus. Because if the malve bechlal, because if he would have says you're right, it was a loan, but prusbul hayeliva avad. Nigul. Shekiva should take chacham prusbul. Chazakahi. But Atkan Chevra, even though the Rambam already wrote that Shemshas has a corner of he can be going below prusbul, but Bechlal, the Rambam began that a prusbul has to be a document only written to a basin of Chachamim Gedolim and the Nusach of the prusbul. However, now we learn something on top. Allah Chachav Zayin. That Talmidei Chachamim Sheilvu Zeh, and all they did was Umasar Devar of Talmidim. Talmidim means not to the basin of Ravami and Ravasi. Stam, like the way we do it, which is what we do. And they say, Moiser and Ilochem, I'm giving over to you. All loans that are owed to me, I'm the lender. I'm giving over the loan to you. Now, the you doesn't want to get involved in it. Say that I'll be your shliach and I'll collect it when I want. Now, why would we be so lenient? Because if people don't know Shmitas Ksafim Derais or Derabanan, then they're going to find this cave in like a joke. God says, do A and we're doing B. But since Talmidei Chachamim know that really there's no Shemitah B'zman Hazeh prior to Yovel coming back. The whole thing is only Midrabanan. And therefore, Ubedvarim Bilvat Initcheis Halacha Koyach. Now, let's go to a case here where there was no prusbul. or bisman shahayovel noyig, where the type of principle that we make doesn't even work. What happens if the borrower still wants to pay the debt back? My father would laugh when he would read these halachas. He was dealing every day with people that owed him money from a schayra and they don't pay. That's what he knew. There, the guy is demanding to pay. He says, where do we find these customers? A guy who's returning a debt, despite the fact that Shemitah passed. The Chachamim are gratified by him. But they have to know how to do it. But the Malva has to insist. No, I nullify. You're putted. You have to have this back and forth. And the other guy has to say, then you kabel mimenu. The Torah says don't demand. And he didn't demand. But even when the borrower gives it back, he should not say, I'm giving back what I owe you. He should tell you, I know that Hashem says that it's nullified. If the borrower didn't know this detail and he gave him back the money, the lender should not say, you know what, Baruch Shapatrani, just let me take my money and run. No, the lender has to tell him, he has to turn the conversation to the point, and if the borrower doesn't end up saying these words, means not yitel, not the lender. The borrower should take back his money and shalom, go. And the final halacha of the chapter, halacha lamed, if someone decided who needs this whole headache, I'm not going to lend money before Shemitah. Because Shema Yisachar Achoiv Etzloi V'Yishamei. So the din is, Avar Beloisa said, that is the negative commandment that he's violating. As it says, Yishamar Lecha. Lest there be a Belial. Belial is words that is rarely used. Belial means a wicked thought. Because the Torah uses the words Yishamar Lecha. Be careful. That in itself is a lav. And the word pen, lest, is another lashon of a lav. Yeah. Either the word Yishamar, right? Be careful. Or the word al, do not. Or the word pen. So you have like a double lav. Yishamar Lecha, pen. And this is even the thought. You know, it's normally sins are of deed. Normally. Where are the exceptions? So I can say, when it comes to zunus, right? When it comes to avodah zara, that's avodah zara. And this, if you'll think not to lend the money, and the Torah calls it belial, wicked. And you have a positive commandment, where the Torah writes double, nothing kiten loy. And the Rambam concludes that that you'll even get rewarded by Olam Hazeh, which is rare. Normally, schar mitzvahs are not in this world. That means if you lend money, that's the greatest level of tzedakah, by tzedakah, right? God rewards you in this world. Not that you should do it shaloi lishma, but if you need the shaloi lishma, lend money to your chaver. Right? The greatest thing is to have pleasure in doing a favor to your fellow yid. And Hashem will wait 70, 80 years to do a favor for your fellow yid. That does it. So this is the kavan of the whole thing. All right, now Yovel. Perek Asiri, finally about Yovel. Guys, this chapter, I'm asking for the Oibishter to bench all of us to remember a lot that we have in this chapter, especially in the beginning, because the Rambam touches upon very big topics in this chapter. It's not just about Yovel, but I just want to throw out the following. Adam Machlekes Rabbi Zajac Rabbi Yeshua. We learned in Kiddush HaChodesh, the only area in Halacha where we paskin like both. We paskin like Rabbi Zajac, we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. We paskin like Shmuel, we paskin like Ravada. We find this when it comes to the calendar. It's like almost mythical. Like time is something so untangible that you can, al pi halacha. So let's go. This following Shitas Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says that Adam was created Echad B'Tishrei. The Olam was Nivra Chav Aleph El. So when we are right now learning Tafshin Pei Gimel Amoshe, Tafshin Pei Gimel from when? From Brias Adam or Brias Olam? Just that's the topic that we have to get to. We have a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. We have other areas. Like based on that, like when did the Mabul happen? When did the Churban Abayis happen? Just the people make a confusion. We paskin, that Rambam paskins, that Adam was created in the second year of creation, even though the world was only 6 days old. The world was created Chafei Elul. the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, right? Arba Rosh Hashanah. We paskin that when does the year change? Echad b'Tishrei. Echad b'Tishrei doesn't need a whole year prior. There's something that will become clear when it comes to the years. Sometimes it's Librias Adam or Librias Oilam, and they're not the same. L'shitas Rambam. There's another machlokes that the Rambam doesn't speak here about, is whether they bechlal counted the year of the flood. The Rambam evidently counted the year of the flood. Some people say that year doesn't count because there was no movements in the heavenly bodies. But let's go over here. Perek Asiri has 16 halachas, halachal. Mitzvahs asay, there's a positive commandment, lispar, to count shanim sheva sheva. Let me type like this: to count 7 sets of 7-year cycles, and then to sanctify the 50th. Shenemar, all of this is in Parshas Bahar. V'sfartu l'cha sheva v'kidashtem eis shnas hachamishim u'shtei mitzvah selu, which is to count 7 sets of 7-year cycles, and to be mekadesh the 50th year, mesurim lebeiznim bulvad. It's not incumbent on every Jew individually. It's incumbent on the Sanhedrin. Now, halacha beis, when did we begin this count? Not from when God gave the Torah, not even from when Yeshua led all of the Jewish people into the Holy Land, but only only after 14 years from when we entered the land. Where is that merumez? Shenemar, because it says regarding Shemitah, Sheishanim tizrasodecha, for 6 years you should sow your field. Sheishanim tizmor karmecha, for 7 years you should trim your vineyard. Everyone has to have their land. And it took that amount of time because it took 7 years for the kibush, and it took 7 years for everyone to get their chelik because they only finished dividing it. Now, the truth is, Chavra, that even after 7 years, Yeshua didn't finish the job. We only know who conquered Yerushalayim and HaKodesh, which that I know that there's a machlekes whether that was Nechlak al Shvatim or not then, but still it took more. But we only the first 14 years it was not done yet. So now let's go into numbers. And then say so. It comes out, guys, that b'shnas sholosh v'chamesh meyos v'alpayim in year 2503. From when, Yakir? From Rosh Hashanah, after the birth of Adam, which is when Adam's year is year 2, not year 1. Shishana shniya liyitzira is chinolim nois. Let me go further, guys. When we say that we left Mitzrayim, everyone remembers, in year 2448. I just want to make this clear, guys. We left Egypt in year 2448, not Librias Ha'olam. When we count Tafshin Pei Gimel, it's Librias Ha'olam. When we speak about everyone on 2448, all of that is Librias Adam. So let's go, let me go Librias, let me go everything Librias Adam, and then I'll add 1 more year. We left Mitzrayim in year 2448. How many years were we in the desert, Chevra? 40 years. Okay. What year is that? 24? No, Yakir, 88. 2488, and then add another 14 years. That's year 2503. But 2503 is only the Brias Adam, yes. But really, what year is this Librias Oilam in year? 2504. 2504. Now let me count that here. 2504, 2505, 2506, 2507, 2508, 2509. 2510, Librias Ha'olam was the first Shemitah. There you go. V'asu shnas eser, you got it? V'chamesh me'es liyitzira. 2,510 years from the Yitzira. She shnas achas esrem, which is the 21st year from when we entered. That was Shemitah. Now you have to begin counting from then. Umano sheva Shemitos, and then v'kitru shnas hachamishim, which is Shnas Arba V'Shishim V'Shenichnos L'Oretz, the 64th year from when we entered Israel. Of course, Yakir, because 64 is 50 plus 14, or it's 14 plus 15. Now let's go further. Let's go to Churban Bayis Rishon. Allah Gimel. Shiva Asar Yoivlin Mani Yisrael. 17 Yoivels were counted from when we entered the land until when we left. Now, Kevin is looking at me. It was not full 17, just to make that clear. The Churban Bayis Rishon Guys, don't forget that before we even built the first Beis Hamikdash, we had the Mishkanos, right? So the total will be that in the 17th cycle, the Churban Habayis happened. Now, V'shana sheyatzeh shecharav bo Habayis Barishayna was Matzoi Shvi Soisa. It was the year after Shemitah. What year was it in the Yovel cycle? Ushnas Sheis Ushloishim Ba Yovel. So it was the 36th year, Yakir, of the 17th Yovel cycle. Why is that? Because Sha'arba Me'eshana Ve'eser Shanim Amr Bayis Rishoyin. Gevaldik. Now, Kivin Shecharav Habayis. How many years? 1 second. How many years were we there before the building of the Beis Hamikdash? 450. No. I just want to add that even before we built, I'm saying this 410. But how many years were we there? So we were there for 14 years in Gilgal, 369 in Shiloh, 57 in Neuven Given. And then you have the 410. And that's going to give you this cheshbon. Once the first bayis was destroyed, we stopped counting the minyan of Yovel. And then the Nivna Bayis Sheni, and it stood for 420 years. Another very important is that this Perek is so big. Guys, you should know that when we began settling Bisman Bayis Sheni, it was not done under religious leadership for the first 7 years. Ezra went up, it wasn't in the beginning. He finalized it. When did Ezra go up? On the 7th year. Ubashana Hashvi'is mi binyanei ala Ezra. The Beis Hamikdash was started, this was the 7th year of its rebuilding. And whenever we speak about Bia Shniya, we don't count it prior to Ezra, even though Ezra didn't begin it. It's only from this year he's Chilo Limlis Minyan Acher. V'asu Shnas Shloish Esrei Lebinyan by Sheni Shemitah. The Hest. In other words, we began counting again 7 years. But if we would have begun counting from Taka when we began building, then it would have been on the 7th year. We only started counting on the 7th year because Ezra only came up on the 7th year. So now 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The 13th year, Yechap was Shemitah year. And now you continue counting. Now the Rambam is going to write another detail, as we'll see in a moment. Yovel is only noyeg bisman shekol yoshveh oleh, plus other details that we'll get in a moment. Which means bisman by Yesheni, there was no yovel. Yakir. That's why Hillel was able to make the hatakon of Prusbal, because it was bisman by Yesheni. The question is like this: the 50th year is not part of the 49 years. There's a machlekes tanoim. Some people hold the 50th year is also year number 1. The Rambam doesn't pass in that way. Shnas HaChamishim stands by itself. The Rambam is writing in Halacha Gimel that they were mekadosh the 50th year, even though Yovel was not noyeg, but year number 1 of the next cycle only began next year. That's what the Rambam writes in Halacha Gimel. Nevertheless, they would count the 50th year in order to be mekadosh, to know when Shemitah is going to be. Because even Bisman She'ein HaYovel Noyeg, according to Halacha Gimel, it delayed the next cycle of 7. Guys, this chapter is huge. Now, Halacha Dalet. Let's make a sequel. Yakir. The second temple's destruction was, now when did it happen? Both button. When did it happen? Tisha B'Av. When the Rambam was writing near Halacha Dalet, we're counting the year of the Churban. Another thing, that these things are so big. We're not counting the year of the actual Churban. Because since the Churban happened, Yakir, on the 9th of Av, it's at the end of the year. The Rambam is making Halacha Dalet is, when we speak about what year was the year of the Churban in the Shemitah cycle, we're not speaking about that Tisha B'Av, we're speaking about Tishrei afterwards. Be'erech 2 months. It's not 2 months. It's 2 months minus 9 days. The Rambam wants to know what year was the year of the Churban, which really means the year after the Churban, Be'erech 2 months. Don't forget that Shemitah turns over. We don't begin counting Shemitah on Tisha B'Av. We began counting Shemitah and Yovel on Echad B'Tishrei. Oisa Shana was again Motzoi Shvi Sois. It was the year after the Shemitah. Now, when it comes to the Yovel, Ushnas Chamesh Esrei, it was in the 15th year of the 9th cycle of Yovel. Why do you have Bisman by Yisrishon in the 17th cycle? You understand why? Because Bisman by Yisrishon, guys, like I said, we had the Mishkanos, we had the Mishkan many years before we built the Beis Hamikdash. We began counting Shemitah, like we just said, on year 2504. Here, there was no Mishkan. It was only 420 years. So it was in the 15th year of the 9th Yovel cycle. The Rambam writes about the year that he wrote this, the year of the Rambam. What year is that? I'm going to just use Shishnas Elef Umeya V'Sheva L'Churban. The Rambam was writing this in year 1,107 years from the Churban. From the Churban doesn't mean from Tisha B'Av. That's you have to remember. From the Churban means from Rosh Hashanah right afterwards. She, which is another cheshbon, just to make it clear. Shnas Sheva Ushmeinim Ve'Ela Ba'Arba Meis Lamin Ashtaris. Year 1,487 from when you would put that date on the document. When Yidden wrote documents, the year that Alexander the Great became the superpower, the leader of the world, which I think the Gemara says was in the 2nd year of his reign, that was called year number 1 for the documents. Okay? Shishnas, now let's go back to the meaning of the world. Shishnas Sheish Ushloishim Uchameyos Va'ad Basalof Liyitzira, year 4936 of creation, which is year 4935 from Adam, just throwing it in there. That's Shemitah. And it is the 21st year of the Yovel cycle. In other words, what the Rambam is doing up until Allah Hey is that just like Bisman by Yesheni, where there was no Yovel, Noyeg, but the Rambam counts the 50th year to delay year number 1. Delay it. So the Rambam is telling you that the year that he's writing, which is in the year 1,207 from the Churban, in year 1487 from when Alexander Mugdaim became the grace of power, in year 4936, the Brias Ha'olam, that's all when you allow the cycle of Shemitah only to begin after the 50th year. However, halacha hey, Aval, the Rambam writes, that is what I would have said, but I'm not saying that. Kol haga'oinim amru, shemesoy resivi yadeim ish mepnei ish, shelo imanu bo'oisem hashivim shana shebein churban bayis rishon v'bayis sheni elo shmitas bolvad. They didn't count. They didn't allow for the Yovel to delay the next cycle. And more than that, even though Bisman habayisheni, but the Rambam wrote, the Rambam stands with what he wrote, that during the 2nd year, 2nd temple, even though they didn't follow the dinim of Yovel, but Yovel delayed the Shemitah, that was only Bisman habayis. But the Chemish Shechara B'Achreinu, the Rambam is writing the Yovel cycle. There's no Yovel cycles after the Churban. Loi manu shnas hachamishim elo sheva sheva bulvad. From when? From the 1st year of the Churban, which means, guys, from 6 weeks after the
Question?
Churban. 1 second. And the Rambam says, and that's not only a fact, but the Chein Oilem Talmud Avodah Zarah over there in Daf Tes, Shu Kabbalah. Yes.
Rabbi, the next cycle begins on year 50 or year 51.
That's the whole point. So whenever you count the Yovel, yeah, that's the whole thing. That's exactly very good, Kevin. So the Rambam is writing like this: that Bisman by Yesheni, even though they were not Noyeg, the dinam of Yovel, but they counted the year of Yovel in order to delay year 51. So the next cycle was year 51.
Got it.
During the 70 years and after the Churban Abayas, that's the tradition. We Bechlal didn't count year 50. We went from year 49 to year number 1. No, the Rambam was trying to tell you what year are we in right now. And Allah Chavav, Ushnas Hashmita Yudu, Umeforsam is Yisrael Goyim Anshe Eretz Yisrael. The Kulam Leimanu Elo L'Shnei Churban. And in other words, once you hit Shnei Churban, you know what you're doing? Yeah, that's exactly Kevan. We're not counting 50. And according to this cheshbon, this year again, what year? The Rambam was writing this on year Yakir 1,107 from the Churban. He's writing again, which was Matzoi Shvi'is. No one debates that. Because even the Go'enim are moide that this man by Yesheni, They counted the Yovel to delay the cycle of Shemitah. And Valzeno Soimchen. And the Rambam writes the best thing that whenever you have both a Kabbalah, which means an oral tradition, and you have Maisa, Maisa means how people are keeping it. Guys, do you remember when was Shemitah? I think last year. I think Tafshan Pei Beis. Like all the Yidden are keeping it as Shemitah. No, that's the Maisa. And it fits to this Kabbalah. Everyone should rely on it. That's the tradition, and that's the Poyal Mamash how it's being done. Okay, now that we established that Rambam wants to, what year are we in? Until the coming of Mashiach, let's go until when Yovel is going to go back. We just established that year 50 is not counted at all. Bisman Bayesheni, it was counted but not observed. Why wasn't it not observed? So let's go. Halacha Zayin. Now we're going to go to Yovel proper. Shnas HaYovel. Whenever you count the year 50 is not also year number 1. It's not Oila Lukan or Lukan. This is a Machlokas Tanoim, but so Paskans the Rambam. Elo Shnas, Teisha Varboim is a Shemitah. Ushnas HaChamishim is a year alone. Stands by itself, it's Yovel. Ushnas Achaz VeChamishim, only year 51, is Tchila Shei Shanim Shol Shavua, V'chem B'chol Yovel Yovel. We gotta move. Mi Shigol Shevet Uvet. Shevet God. Achatzi Shevet Benashe, which is Bisman Bayis Rishoin, Batlo Yoivloi, Shenemer, as it says, Ukarasam Doror Ba'aretz L'chol Yoishvel, L'chol, not L'roiv, Chol. Bisman Shekol Yoishvel Leo. Not only is that, it's not even enough for all the Yidden to be there. Even if all the Yidden would be now in the Holy Land, Amen, even if that were to happen, you don't begin Yovel yet. You know why? Because we don't know who belongs to which tribe. And for that, you need to have Moshiach, who's going to be Moed V'Doin, as the Rambam writes at the end. He's not going to speak about who's a mamzer, who's not, but he's going to say, what tribe are you from? And why do I have to know what tribe? Because we have to not only all the Jews in Israel, every tribe has to be living in their territory. Only then do you have the Yovel Moed. That's a big statement. Now, just to note that in Chazal we find that Yoshiyahu HaMelech succeeded in bringing back the roiv of these tribes. And the Gemara writes many times, and therefore at the end of Zman Bayis Rishon, the counting of Yovel restarted, even though we never actually kept Yovel. Because Yoshiyahu, if I remember correctly, brought them back 35 years before the Churban. Churban was in year 36. Rambam just wrote. Exactly. Now, Zman Yovel Noig Ba'aretz, whenever there's Yovel Ba'aretz, listen, Noyeg B'chutz La'aretz. Chutz La'aretz, we're not speaking about the lands don't return. We're speaking about Shichrut Avadim. Shichrut Avadim. Shenemer, as it says, Yovel Hi B'chol Makim, Ben B'fnei Abayis, Ben Shalei B'fnei Abayis. Halacha 9, it was much Yovel Noyeg, Noyeg didn't have a divri. And within Bater Chayma, as we'll learn. And within Stei Charamim, fields that were given as a dedication offering. And the din of Stei Achuzah that we're going to learn, God willing, in the next chapter. The ancestral fields that go back. Umekablim Ger Toisha. And like we mentioned, and then whenever Yovel is noyig, that Hashmatas Ksafim is applicable biblically everywhere. Minatoira. But Ubisman Sheina Yovel noyig, ein noyig ever David. Voloi Batei Rechaim, Voloi Stei Achuzah, Voloi Stei Charamam. Again, Lochoir, the Rambam said it in the beginning. He writes Charamam first, Stei Achuzah second. Here he changes the order, if that's the right version. The Umekablim Ger Toisha. V'nehege Shvias only ba'aretz, only midivreim. As we learned in the previous chapter. Halacha Yud. Now comes another day. Okay, now let's go. Whenever Yovel is noig, was tut men mitzvahs asay letkoy b'shofar b'asidi latishrei b'shnas hayev to blow the shofar on what we call Yom Kippur. Now this mitzvah, the counting that I'm right. Who does the counting? Only Beis Din. Who blows the shofar? Yakir. Everyone, but first the Beis Din and then everyone else. Mitzvah zu of blowing the shofar Masura leBeis Din tchila, not only leBeis Din. After the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin blows the shofar, then v'chol yachid the yachid chayiv l'tkoyim. How great is that? No, it has to be sounded by everyone, but after the blowing of the Beis Din, Shenemar, as it says, ta'aviru means you means you, the yachid. V'toikem b'shofar teisha. How many sounds? Same thing by Rosh Hashanah. The 9 means tarat tarat tarat. V'chuli. We don't have time to go into that. Kederach shetoikem Rosh Hashanah. Another din, umavir and shofar b'chol gvul Yisrael. Meaning not b'chutz la'aretz, but yes, everywhere in Israel. Halacha Yud Aleph, another detail. Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. Rosh Hashanah Chaliyas b'Shabbos, where did they blow? Only by Sanhedrin. Here they blew it everywhere. Here we go. Shofar shel Yovel b'Rosh Hashanah. Echad l'chol davar. Same din. The Echad Yovel, the Echad Rosh Hashanah latkiyos. The only difference is that Elo Shabbat Yovel means b'Shabbos. Yovel is always Shabbos because Yovel is Yom Kippur. And like we mentioned, but what yakir? But on Rosh Hashanah Chaliyas b'Shabbos, it's not enough that based in Yoshua. You only blow it in that based. Allah Yud Beis, Rosh Hashanah Chaliyas b'Shabbos. Here you go. The aim call there are three things, the three matters that are of critical importance. And that's called Hashmatas Karka. Halacha Yudala. When does that happen? From Rosh Hashanah of the Yovel year, Ad Yom Kippurim, Lo Yehoy Avodim Neftaron Leboteim. But Mitzat Sheni, V'lo Mishtabdim Ladrineim, they were no longer subservient. Elo Hasodis Chayzres Lebaleim, Avoloy Hasodis Chayzres Lebaleim, nor did the fields go back. Nor was then Elo Avodim Oichlin, V'shoisim, V'smeichim, V'atresem, V'resheim. Actually, they were eating in whose cheshbon? In their old master's cheshbon. Even Shigir Yom Kippurim, Toko Beis and Bashoifer, Niftura Avodim Leboteim, Chazru Sodis Lebaleim, Halacha Tezvav, Din HaYovel, V'shvisa Sa'aretz, and the din hashmita, all of the dinim that we learned before about the two avos and the two taldes and all the rabbanans, all of that by shmita, by yovel is the same. Echad l'chol davar. Chosh asa b'shviz, ma'avodas aretz, asa b'shnas yovel. Chosh mota b'shviz, mota b'yovel. Umalachi shaloikin aleim b'shviz, loikin b'yovel. V'din peidah shnas yovel. Remember kedushas peidah is b'achila or b'mechira or b'bir kedin peidah shviz l'chol ha'machayim. Final halacha of this chapter, halacha tezayin, you say the shvius al yovel. That what? Shvius, mishametzes ksofim. All the debts are nullified. That was the previous chapter. But the ein hayovel mashmet ksofim. And on the other hand, the yasser yovel ala shvius, shayovel moitzi avodim, and umashmet karka. V'zeu din mechira sodes ha'omer b'toira, as we will begin in the next chapter. The himetzvas aseh. Shenemer geula titnu la'aretz. That la'aretz means, the Goyim quote it, right? However, on the bell over here in America, who cares? It means something else. It means that the land goes back to the original owners. This Geula. Not that the people should be redeemed, that the land is redeemed. When is land redeemed? When it goes back to where it belongs. Yovel mashman karka betchilasai, another din. We just learned in the previous chapter that the Hashmatas Ksafim Rambam is only Besoifai, but this din of Hashmatas betchilasai means from your Yom Kippur. Ushvius ene meshametz ksafim lo besoifa. K'moshe b'yarno, as we learned in Perek Tes. And now, let's move on to today's final chapter, to the 11th chapter, Shemitah v'Yovel. Now let's begin learning the din of Shemitah's Karka, meaning let's speak about what we call a Sedei Achuzah. Sedei Achuzah is your ancestral field. We as a Yid, we owned land in the Holy Land. And we just quoted, trying to remember where, that when Mashiach will come, the converts will be given land. Even though I think they had Yericho Bisman in the beginning. But Yisrael had Yericho. Anyways, let's come back over here. So we have land, and the din is that even if you sell the land, which you shouldn't, try not to, it goes back to you on the Yovel year. This chapter has 21 halachas. Let's begin with halacha Aleph. Zakter Rambam Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, the parts of Israel that was divided. Why are we saying that? Because could be later they conquered other territories. We're speaking about the biblical boundaries of Israel, which was divided to the tribes. Einon nimkeres litzmisus, can never be sold permanently. That's the din. You got it. Shenemer, as it says, not sell it. Now, if it was sold in perpetuity, first of all, both the seller and the buyer violated the commandment. On top of that, what they did is ineffective. Just because they made that deal. It will go back to the original owner. But what happens if it was sold for 60 years? Not in perpetuity. So then, because stam or these are big halachas. Halacha gimel. Don't do what Elim came on. You can say as an asmachta. I'm not talking about even here, b'chlal, it's better not to do that. Try to hold on to land. But this is a din Torah. When you own land in Israel, b'chlal, don't try not to sell it. Which implies if you're not yamuk, don't do it. But to sell it to have money in your pocket, or to have money to do business, or to buy kelim avodim or behema, to invest money in the stock market, in the bond market, you can only do it if you need to eat, God forbid. But if you did it, that judgments are made with regard to selling a house in a walled city, as we will learn, and we make judgments regarding fields. And what judgments? Well, that the judgments of the din of stei achuza, which what we're learning about. Din moich stei achuza. What's the din of stei achuza? What is the unique din? It's not only that it goes back, my friends, on yovel. It's more than that. That once the buyer had it for 2 years minimum, then the seller has the right to redeem it. But when he redeems it, he has to deduct the years. As the Rambam gives numbers, if I sold it 10 years before the yovel, and I sold it for 10 yakir, and 2 years passed, and now it's 8 years before the yovel, I only pay 8 to redeem it, because the guy already ate up 2. That's the din. Din moichas teachozose lechashev esadamim, to make the calculation lefi hasharam hanishamis layovel. Ubecholei sheyirtza, after 2 years. Liftois machashev emalekech alosharam shoachal vigorem ediam echad umachzolei esashar, for example. Haresh nishal layovel esashanim. And during I sold my land, not I, Reuven sold it because he was poor, God forbid. And he sold it for 100 dinar, which really means 10 dinar a year. And he ate up 3. So how much money does he have to pay back? Not the whole 100, only 70. And if he didn't give anything, he didn't redeem it. As it says, according to the number of years of the crops, it should be sold to you. So what happens if when he sold it, it was filled with produce, and after 2 years he wants to redeem it? The seller cannot tell the buyer, you're right, 3 years passed, I'm going to give you 70, but I wanted 70 full. No, can't do that. Which is the minimum. But the guy ate up already 3 harvests, so be it. The buyer won, the seller loses. That's why the Torah uses the words alpi shanim. The calculation is made according to years, meaning not according to the crops. 1 second. Allah zayin konim, shoots of twigs, all right, and the fruits of the wild fig trees. In other words, they are considered temporary benefits of the field. They are considered, my friends, as peiros, chaps, kishar peiroshalot. But if there was a tree that the branches were cut down, or if the tree dried up, which means that they are only valued as firewood. Amazing. Shneim asurim boy. The moicher cannot take it. Why? Because it belongs to the buyer. The buyer cannot keep it, because it was sold with the land. The land is being given back. So what should you do? You macher v'yilakach v'dam of karka. How crazy is that? And now, means if the moicher will get money to redeem it. If the moicher will get, and if not, then the lekech takes benefit from it until yovel, and by yovel everything goes back. Beautiful. Now, what happens? The lekech bought it. Yeah, okay, let's say I bought it and I planted ilamis. Means I invested money, and now the field has an increased value. So let's go. When it goes back in yovel, I have the right to say I invested that money. So sham and shevach he must pay. No, how much was there an increase in value, and the seller has to pay it. As it says, that what that mimkar chayzer v'ein hashava chayzer. Halach beautiful. Halach 9. These are big halachas. These are the foundational rules. There's much. That's part of that. So don't sell it. That's part of the rules. Everyone knows the rules from the beginning. That's part of the rules. Halacha 9. Another din, ain't with the legal law pachas b'shtei shanim. At least when you buy land, imagine you're going to buy land. Why would you ever buy land? The guy can always buy it back. No, the guy gets to keep it for 2 years. Shenemar, as it says, that's the meaning of this pasuk in Bahar. The mispar shnei tevu ois yimkar lo. According to the number of years, you know what years is? B'lashon rabin. And the purchaser is willing to return it earlier. You don't do that. Amazing. As it says, according to the number of the years, plural, tikna. Another din. When it comes to these years, how do you count the years? Not echad b'tishrei, not chodesh chashav shana, not yom echad chashav shana. Full years. Beautiful. That's why we learned before that it's shayach 2 years and 3 harvests, because it's years on the calendar date. Halacha. Another din. There has to be, what happens, as we'll see in a moment, there was some sort of drought that affected everyone. What's the pshat 2 years? Hashem wants to make sure that when you buy land, even though you know that the guy can always get it back from you, you got 2 years of crops. If you don't get 2 years of crops, you get to keep it until you get 2 years of crops. Imagine 1 year was Shemitah, or 1 year was a Shnashi Dafan. There was a wind blasted year that affected everyone, or Yerakah, there was blight. Now listen to this. What happens if, however, if the buyer decided on his own to leave it Buddha? Buddha means completely fallow, and he only ate 1 of the 2 years. Or if he did a shana of a nara. Nara, we learned that Rambam, we're going to touch nara means he plowed it lightly. He didn't do a proper planting. That's something personal. It's on you. Who asked you to do it so weak? Yes, however, listen to this chiddush, guys. What happens if the field was sold? If you sell land on the Yovel year, when is the Yovel mashmat karkois? What did we learn at the end of the past chapter? Right, I think the end of the last chapter, yeah, in the beginning. So b'chlal, it's not sold. The sale is not binding. The money has to go back. But what happens if the seller sold it 1 year before Yovel? Guys, this will blow your minds. You have to know the rules. What did we say? That the lekech gets to keep it for 2 years. He only got it for 1 year. You know what the din is? He keeps it year 48. Keeps it year 48, because Shemitah doesn't count. Keeps it 48. He keeps it on year number 1. And on year number 2, it goes back. The second year will be the year number 1. But you know what happens? Then it goes back automatically. Why does it go back automatically? Look at the irony. Yovel was mafkia the schus of the borrower. The reason why it didn't go back on the Yovel year on Yom Kippur, because the lekech has 2 years. But it's not that since he gets year number 1, now he has to wait another 50 years. No. After the second year goes by, the Yovel affected the freedom. Beautiful. If there were clefts in the land that were filled with water, or there were slayim, in other words, parts of land that are not roim l'zriya, you know what we say? We say you don't even need to wait 2 years. Because the Torah says which means but we don't say then it's sold for perpetuity. No, yovel is noyik. In other words, the seller always wins over here. If he only sold fruit trees, because even though it's not tvua, but it is tvua. No, it's a genetic word. But here's the chiddush. If you only sold an orchard, guys, wow, guys, we're speaking about selling the trees. Halacha Yudalad is you did not sell the land. You did not sell the land. As it says, you return to your ancestral heritage. If you kept the land, all you sold is the trees. You know what the din is? The trees are sold forever. Halacha Tezvav, it's gavaldik, mamish gavaldik. Machar sedei you sold it to one person. That person sold it to a second person. That person sold it to a third person even 100 times. As it says, it's to the person who has this as his ancestral heritage. That guy will get it back.
Wait, you don't say each person has to have 2 years of crops?
No, 2 years of crops is if I want to redeem it before the Yovel. When it goes to Yovel, it goes back to the first one. 2 different dinim. Now, 1 second. What about the money? What happens? Listen to this. I sold it to the first 100 dinar. Say I sold it to Kevin. Kevin sold it to Yakir for 200 dinar. After 2 years, I can redeem it. And you make the cheshbon. But do I make the cheshbon based on the number of the first sale or of the second sale? So the seller wins, the owner wins, because it says, now what happens? What happens? 1 second, I'm not done yet. What about you, Kevin? Because if I get it from you, if I take it back from Yakir, I only have to pay based on the number that I sold it to number one. But I want you to know that in my example, Kevin will have to reimburse you. But you're not going to lose. If you paid 200 to Kevin, I only sold it for 100 to him. He sold it to you for 200. Even though my cheshbon is based on the 100, I get back my field from you, Yakir, but the lekeach rishon has to compensate. In the other direction, and Kevin did a bad deal, and he sold it to Yakir for 100. You understand? He went down. You know what I do? I always win. I only have to give you based on the 100. It's not consistent. The original owner always wins. What about another thing? The hishbicha, just for the sake of confusion. In Halacha Ches, we learned about the lekeach investing money. In Halacha here, Halacha Tezayin, we're dafken not talking about the lekeach investing money. We're speaking about that the field increased because of market fluctuations, because real estate went up. Keminig LA always goes up. Here, only up. That's something else. So v'ishbicha b'yad lekeach, and now what do we say? The seller always wins. The original owner. But what happens in the other direction? In Miami, where the real estate goes down, and then the value diminished. Ooh, now it can only be sold for 100. The seller wins. You make the cheshbon on the lower amount. In other words, what do we see? It's not consistent. What we want for the original owner to get greater legal power. Hashem wants you to keep your land that He gave you. He doesn't want you to sell it b'chlal, which means that we always weaken the power of the lekeach. Okay, when you own many properties, you sold one to me, and now you want to redeem it from me, which you could after 2 years, but you're not getting new money. You're selling property that you owned the whole time. You can't do that. Ain't shaymin line. Because it says regarding the right of the original seller to redeem it, umatza. In other words, he attained new money. Not that he always had that money. And similarly, if he borrowed money legal, it says v'hisiga means you acquired. What happens if you made some money and you want to redeem half of the field? Also ain't shaymin, because it says kedei ge'ula, enough to redeem it. What's an it? It is all of it. In other words, oy goyel es kula oy ena goyel. But there is one other thing, and that is that the relative of the seller can do it on behalf of that can happen. So they are matana. If you give it as a gift, can't redeem it. You know why you can't redeem it? Because you never sold it. But it goes back to you on Yovel. Because it says, Toshuvu ish el achuzasi. Every man returns to his ancestral heritage. Now, first of all, we paskin that they have a dinner of ulukuchas. And therefore what? Just like everything goes back, you know what it means? It's crazy that the division that we made reverts back on the Yovel year. But let me say like this: when brothers divide an inheritance, there are 2 steps. Step number 1 is the father left Fusas Habayis. He left 10 homes. Not every home has the same value. Let's say he left 3 sons. So the first step is to make 3 equal valued. Then who's getting which one? When the Rambam says it reverts in Yovel, it's only step number 2 reverts. They don't have to go back to the drawing board, but everyone gets another property, but as it was divided. But the Rambam says only step number 2 is reverted, which would make things even more complicated. Or He will get another property. But everyone is reminded how really we all come b'koyach our father. And the father is reminded he's coming b'koyach his father all the way back to the Yidden who entered the Holy Land. The final halacha.
Sorry, the three brothers just swap properties with each other?
Yes.
Can they agree not to, or they have
to? Probably they can agree not to. They probably can agree not to. But again, the main chiddush, there's two steps that you have to chap halacha chav. Again, Kevin, when a father passes away, it's not so simple to make divisions. Before who's getting what, the father left 10 properties, he has 3 sons. One is here, one is there, one is worth more, one is worth less, one can be monetized quickly. The first step is to figure out how to make 3 equal portions. That stays forever. The next step is then they made a goydel. Who's getting what portion? That every 50 years, they make a cycle. Halacha chafal. Avol, however, in contrast, hayerushas ishtoi. And the irony is that Yerushas ishtoi is only midrabanan. Osu chizik l'divneim kishal toira. That what? That it bechlal never goes back in yovel. Wow. Why? That's many times, guys. Sometimes dinei derabanan are more stronger than dinei toira. Osu chizik l'divneim. There's one detail, one exception. You know what the exception is? Is that if the woman, Yerusha, got the Beis HaKvadas that belongs to her whole family. And it's a pegam mishpacha, guys. It's called, it blemishes the reputation of a family. If they're Beis HaKvadas, don't forget it went to the son-in-law. So we want for them to be able to get it back. They have to pay him the money for that. Because of this concept of pegam mishpacha. They have to pay him the worth. So they have to pay him all of the worth? No, they don't have to pay him all of the worth. You know why? Because it was from that worth that the husband used money to fulfill his obligations of burying her. So that money is not returned. That the husband is chayiv to do for his wife. To make have an ishta because chayiv b'kivurasa givaldik.
Question? Is it time?
What was that? No, you're giving him. In other words, a guy inherited from his wife. She, Yerusha, was part of her. Yerusha was the Beis HaKvadas of their family. It only goes back in Yovel. But no. Since the Chachamim made a chizuk l'devrayim, that this never goes back. Which means really the husband owns it. Sell it. You have to sell it. That's called give back the land, but get the money. But you don't get all the money because he buried her from that. That money you don't get back. That you have to do. Yeah. Okay.
Wait, is the Mama Mashiach, everyone has to go back to the tribal land, correct?
That's correct. Mashiach.
So what happens to all the property people have bought?
In other words, let me word it this way: we're going to get a juicy piece of real estate. That's why you need Mashiach for this. Can you imagine the dinei Torah that's going to happen when Mashiach comes? A guy paid Nebuch the payments forever, loyal but he got a little apartment somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. Comes along me or you, and Mashiach will say we're going to have to pay for it. I'm not saying, I don't know for that. Wow, that's going to be fun.